Hello everyone, in this series of video I am discussing about human heart. In today's topic we are going to focus on heartbeat and cardiac cycle. As I have mentioned earlier that heart is nothing but a pump. It acts like a pump and it pumps what? It pumps blood. So in order to pump blood, the heart continuously needs to contract and relax. Okay, so heart continuously needs to contract and relax. Fine. Now this causes heartbeat. So first we are going to understand what is heartbeat. So spontaneous rhythmic contraction contraction here is called systole. Okay, these two terms are very important. And relaxation, which is known as diastole, of both the auricle and ventricle is known as heartbeat. Okay, so it's mean the heart simultaneously contracts, right? It contracts and relaxes, right? Contracts and relaxes. Okay, now the contraction is called systole and the relaxation is called diastole. Both the chambers, both auricles and both ventricles simultaneously contracts and relaxes, which causes heartbeat. Fine. Now each heartbeat lasts for 0.8 second. Okay, each heartbeat lasts for 0.8 second and our heart beats 70 times in a minute. So these two are very important short question, that each heartbeat lasts for 0.8 second and our heart beats for 70 times in a minute. Okay, so this is all about our heartbeat. Okay, so in our next topic we are going to talk about cardiac cycle, right? Cardiac cycle. Now this denotes the sequence of atrial and ventricular contraction and relaxation which occurs once during each complete heartbeat. So to complete one heartbeat, the auricles or the atria needs to contract and the ventricles also needs to contract and relaxes. That is cardiac cycle. So we are going to write the definition here. So cardiac cycle denotes the sequence of atrial and ventricular contraction and relaxation which occur once during each heartbeat. Okay, now we are going to understand this definition in step-by-step order. First, we need to understand our step 1 or phase 1, that is atrial systole, right? What I said earlier, systole means contraction. Systole means contraction. So, these two atrium, they simultaneously contracts. Fine. They simultaneously contracts, which causes the blood flow towards the ventricle. Right? When these two atrium simultaneously contract, the blood goes down to the ventricle. Via what? Via the atrioventricular septum. Right? Now we all know this is the tricuspid septum and this is the bicuspid septum or valve. You can call them valve. So in atrial systole, what happens? The blood goes, these two atriums they contract simultaneously. Together they contracts and the blood goes down to the ventricle. Right atrium to right ventricle and left atrium to left ventricle. Right? Now this is atrial systole. This causes what? This causes the blood flow, that is auricle to ventricle, in both right and left. Okay, in both right and left. Both right and left atrium, and here also both right and left ventricle. Okay, blood goes, right? Via what? Via the atrioventricular valves. These two are atrioventricular valves. Valves, that is tricuspid valve and bicuspid valve. This one is bicuspid valve, as I have mentioned it earlier, which is also called mitral valve, and this one is tricuspid. Okay, via these two valves, blood goes from auricle to ventricle. 9. Right, and this entire process takes 0.1 second. 0.1 second. Fine. This is phase 1. Now, in this time, what happens? In this time, when once the blood reaches the ventricle, what will happen? These two valves will close, right? These two valves will close. So this atrioventricular valves closes, right? Now these valves closes, which causes a sound. That sound is loud. Okay, when these two valve closes, they make a sound, that is loud. Okay, LUVV. This is the first sound of heart. Heart makes two sound. One is lub and another one is dub. Lub dub lub dub. Like this, the heart beats. The first sound is lub, which occurs in this phase when the atrioventricular septum closes. Fine, and the time is 0.1 second. Okay. Next, we are going to go to phase 2. Right? We are going to go to phase 2. Phase 2. Fine. In this, what happened? The ventricle. This is the previous one was atrial systole. It's mean the atria gets contracted, and this phase is called ventricular systole. Right? It means the ventricles will get contracted. So these two ventricles, that is the right ventricles and left ventricles, RV and LV, they contract simultaneously. So they simultaneously contracts, right? So if they contracts, what will happen? The blood will go to their channels, right? Now, like from the right ventricle, it will go to the pulmonary artery, and from the left ventricle it will go to the aorta. If these two ventricles contracts, what will happen? The blood from the right ventricle, the blood will go to the pulmonary artery. This is the pulmonary trunk, right? Now this is the pulmonary trunk, and from left ventricle the blood will go to the aorta, right? Now this for this process, this step, it takes 0.3 second. Okay, so in these steps what we can see, it from ventricles blood reaches to pulmonary artery in case of right ventricle, and aorta for left ventricle, right? Via what? Via these semilunar valves. These valves we can see here. Okay, these two are semilunar valves. Via these two valves the blood reaches pulmonary artery and aorta. Okay, so blood goes to these two places via semilunar valves. Okay, this takes 0.3 second. Next we are going to go to phase 3, right? Now this phase is also called the joint diastole, right? It's mean in this phase what will happen? All the 4 chambers will get relaxed, right? All the 4 chambers will get relaxed, right? Relaxation of both chambers of auricles and ventricle. Fine. Okay, I'm going to erase this and write this part here. So in this phase what happened? Both the chambers of auricle or atria, we can call them both auricles or ventricles, they get relaxed. Fine. So what happens when the entire system gets relaxed? Blood is poured in right atrium via vena cava. We have two part, that is, this part is called superior vena cava and this part is called inferior vena cava. Via these two channels blood reaches to right atrium. Fine. So by this vena cava, since we are talking about 2, okay, so blood is poured in the right atrium or auricle, whatever you call it. Okay, I'm going to write it atrium, and from pulmonary veins, these are the pulmonary veins, right? See, PV written. We have 2 pairs of pulmonary veins in each side. Here we have we have 1 pair of pulmonary veins in each side. Here we have 1 pair, right? It's mean 2. Here we have 1 pair, right? By this 2 pairs of pulmonary veins, what happens? Blood is poured in left ventricle. Fine. And this takes, okay, I'm going to use some, this takes 0.4 second. Okay, now when the blood is reaching in this aorta and pulmonary artery and aorta, then the heart get relaxes. When the heart get relaxes, these semilunar valves, these 2 semilunar valves get closed. Okay, these 2 semilunar valves they closes themselves. Okay, which makes the second high pitch sound called dub. Okay, this is the second high pitch sound of heart. Fine. So heart doesn't do dhak dhak, it does lub dub. Okay, it does what? It does lub dub. That is the sound of heart. Fine. Now the entire process, if you have calculated, just a moment. Okay. So the entire cardiac cycle, the first phase took 0.1 second, the second phase took 0.3 second, and the final phase took 0.4 second. So together it becomes 0.8 second, right? So if we make a diagram like this, so the final diastole, the joint diastole, okay, it took 0.4 second, right? The ventricular, just a moment, the ventricular systole took 0.3 second, and auricular, or just a moment, yeah, auricular systole took 0.1 second. So together it is 0.8 second. Each heartbeat lasts for 0.8 second. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much.